Hello, everybody. I'm Riley Woodall, and welcome to the Toss-Up. We're jumping from Bart Kaufman to Andy Moore this week. That's right. It's all things IU softball. We'll analyze the early success of the Hoosiers and dissect this team compared to others before it. And later, we'll have Cora Bassett in the studio for more on this 2024 squad. All of that and more coming up on the Toss-Up. It was an absolutely remarkable year for Team 51 last season. A 44-18 record, 18 conference wins, a Big Ten championship appearance, and they punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2011. And with all that success from a year ago, the bar has been raised and the expectations are even higher this season. What's in store for Indiana softball in 2024? We've got all the answers for you, and I'm joined by a phenomenal group of softball connoisseurs, Emma Watson, Ryan Costello, and Ryan Canfield. Guys, it's the softball show. Finally, I'm so excited.
I know. All you guys coordinated to wear blue, and I feel a little bit left out.
It was like a smoke signal that I sent up. Yeah.
Well,
Anyway, we'll jump right into it. So, Emma, I'm going to go to you first. You've covered this team the past 2 seasons. This is your 3rd year along with Ryan. So I'm curious, when you look at this team, how does it stack up with the ones that you've seen come before it, and what makes this group so special?
There's a common word when we talk to all of the players and the coaching staff about Team 51 in particular, and it's called talented. And I kind of want to argue against that word because if you look at teams past, especially if you look at the record books and you look at Team 48 and Team 49, there's some names that start to pop up. Emily Gooden, Gabby Jenkins, Grayson Radcliffe, Brittany Ford, Juvia Davis. I can go on and on. All of them had talent. All those teams were talented. What puts Team 51 and Team 50, particularly from last year, what puts them on a pedestal above all these other teams is that the offense was so productive. If you look at Team 50, they led in total hits per season. They led in RBIs, doubles, hit by pitches. Most of that was due to Taryn Kern. But when you look at Team 51, what really surprises me about them is that they have all of this talent that has been stacked up through Stanton's tenure at IU, but they're fearless in the circle. You've got 4 pitchers in Montgomery, Kleiman, Copeland, and Heather Johnson that are absolutely unafraid to throw the ball in the circle. I mean, Sophie Kleiman, you put her up against Clemson and the #1 player from last year, Valerie Cagle, and she throws complete innings. You put Brianna Copeland, who has just evolved as a pitcher. She's more than just a two-way player now. She's a two-way leader now and a vocal leader in that circle when she plays. And so for me, for Team 51, yeah, they got the batting power. They're athletes. That's who Stanton recruits. But what's surprising me the most about them and what's making them special compared to teams past is just how dauntless this pitching group is.
And it's certainly what's contributed to a very hot start that they are on. Ryan, I'm going to go to you. 11-4 on the season so far. They started off this season with a ranked win over Oregon. In your opinion, what's been critical to their early success, and what has impressed you most about them?
Emma kind of touched on it, the pitching. Both Brianna Copeland and Sophie Kleiman especially have really set the precedent for them in this season. And the pitching was kind of the one thing last season that in some of the closer games with all the offense, they really needed that pitching. And this season, Sophie Kleiman, especially after her freshman year, she's been lights out. She already had a no-hitter against Central Michigan this past weekend down in Arizona, but also moving to the offense again. They have 7 players that hit 300 or better, and Taylor Minnick and Brianna Copeland are both leading the team in RBIs, so they can do it on both sides of the ball, and that's what's really impressed me so far.
So Ryan, Emma alluded to it a little bit earlier. Ryan on the end, by the way. We got 2 Ryans on the show. But she
both
alluded,
Ryan C.
Exactly, both Ryan C.
RC squared.
So Emma alluded to it earlier, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. That's the absence of Taryn Kern on this team. Freshman phenom for the Hoosiers a year ago, transfers to Stanford. That's a big loss for Indiana. So in your opinion, who are some players that are going to step up in the absence of the All-American?
So I want to go away from the returnees from Brianna Copeland. We know Brianna Copeland's going to get hers. We know Taylor Minnick's going to get hers. We know Cora Bassett is going to get hers. But when you sat down with Coach in these very chairs, Alex Cooper was the name that she really talked about a lot. She has a presence on the corners and at shortstop, and she can pitch and she can hit. And we saw that a lot over these past couple games, and she's been phenomenal. And she's going to have a lot of opportunities this coming weekend at the home opener in a big tournament for IU. So I'm really excited to see Alex Cooper.
So, Emma, I'm coming back to you on this one. So, Indiana's just coming off the Hillenbrand invite. They went 3-2. I think a lot of people would argue that they should have gone 4-1, but we'll leave that as it be. For those that did not watch the game, could you break down the play that changed the game and ultimately led to Arizona beating Indiana twice in that invitational?
I really wouldn't call that a game. I would call that more of a marathon. It was 14 innings in the Arizona heat. It went back and forth. If you're a fan of softball, I highly recommend go back and watch that game because it had everything. It had lead changes, it had small ball, it had, at one point, Cora Bassett, who was playing right field, was right next to Brooke Benson, who was the shortstop, and that threw everybody off, and that was the craziest thing I've seen a coach do. But it worked. She got the out. But the play at the plate really defined what was such an amazing game. And what I'm talking about is Indiana had the 9-7 lead in the bottom of the 14th with 2 outs. And Arizona hit a single that would have driven a run in. Kinsey Mitchell picks up the ball. She throws it to the plate. Avery Parker, the catcher, catches it, and it appears that the runner is tagged out. But she was called safe due to obstruction. Now, I was at that game. I was shooting that game, and I was right behind home plate, and this is the photo.
Yeah, get it.
Right here, yeah.
Get it.
Go, you can do a dramatic zoom on this.
A dramatic zoom, any
You can
kind
do
of
as
zoom,
much as you want. But this photo is from a video that I took, and if you see it, she catches the ball and she tags the runner out. According to obstruction from years past, obstruction basically means that a catcher cannot block the batter from trying to, or the runner from trying to tag home. In the new rule, because obstruction is such a gray, complex call that you can't really make with human eyes, they changed it to where if the catcher has the ball before the runner starts to slide or starts to attempt to tag home, the catcher can set up any way that they want, even if that is in front of the bag. And so if you look at that play, you can look at an Arizona stream, or you can take a look at my little picture. Avery Parker appeared to have the ball about a half a second before the runner started her slide. That call would have made Indiana win the game in 14 innings. In fact, half of the dugout was out of the dugout and already celebrating, and the Indiana fans were partying with some of the fans that had stayed from the previous games in the tournament, thinking that they had won the game. Now, this isn't me arguing, they should go back and they should review it, and Arizona and all this stuff. Arizona is a phenomenal team. You've got Allie Skaggs and Carly Scolpin, and there are so many players that stepped up on that team. They're a phenomenal team. I think that they can do really well, even looking at the postseason. But Indiana battled back, punched back. Yeah. And this is another instance where obstruction gets put into the conversation, where there needs to be video review for these umpires at all of these marquee matchups that are advertised as headliners, big softball games. Softball is way popular. We're in 2024. Ryan Canfield said that before the show started.
Yeah, I was going to say, he mentioned that. Yeah.
Now, the Big Ten...
You got to have video review.
The Big Ten Conference will have video review for all the conference games. So we won't have this problem at Andy Moore. And same with the Pac-12. They won't have it at the Hillenbrand. But for these games, video review is absolutely essential, especially for calls like this. Now, the most shocking thing, is it pretty? The most shocking thing about that is not the play. The most shocking thing about that to me is that it proved just how resilient Team 51 is. To go behind, to come back, to take the lead, to lose the lead, to tie it again, to take the lead, and then to have it end on something that really wasn't out of their control, that was out of their control. I think shows a lot of the character of this team. Now, there's no moral victories in softball. There's just, the win or the loss. But there's a lot to take and there's a lot to learn, and we watched this team especially grow up in those 14 innings.
Some great analysis from Emma Watson. Ryan, I'm going to jump to you. This is a team that was really, really good last year. They won 23 straight games at one point in time, but they weren't quite there. They lost some really competitive matchups. They lost to some ranked opponents. So in your opinion, what are some things they need to correct from last season and what you've seen early on this season to help them reach new heights in 2024?
I think it would be improving their fielding. Last year, they led the Big Ten with 75 errors. So doing that and having more consistent pitching, which they have had so far. They are second in the conference with a 196 ERA, which is much improved from last year. So they're seeing that on the pitching side, but their errors are kind of up there leading the conference again. So they need to use that veteran leadership like Cora Bassett, like Brooke Benson, Sarah Stone, all those infielders. They need to shore up that fielding percentages because those little balls that pass or that they drop and they let ricochet off their gloves are going to be key coming down in those close competitive matchups.
I'm going to Ryan on the end. Our last individual question of the day. Ryan, conference play is a little under a month away. So as you look at this schedule coming up for the Hoosiers, what are a couple series that you've got your eyes on that could be make or break for Indiana?
So I like the first series of conference play at University Park, Happy Valley, whatever you want to call it, against Penn State to begin and set the tone for the Big Ten season. And then Indiana will end the season in Evanston against the team that had the #1 seed in the Big Ten tournament last season. That's Northwestern. So it's about finishing strong and starting strong. I kind of switched that there, but start strong, finish strong into the postseason.
So we've got one more question before we go into a little kind of game show. We'll get to that in a second. But I want to just kind of lay this question out. Anybody can jump in whenever they want. What's the ceiling for Team 51? How far do you think they'll go in the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament?
I think that they can challenge once again they were up there, they finished second place, and they were very close in that conference championship against Northwestern. So I think they can challenge for the Big Ten title, especially with Jordy Ball going out for Nebraska and having that key pitching and Northwestern being a little bit younger this year. So I think that they can go up there and challenge for the regular season title.
Championships, Big Ten, national. This team's got it all. And they're going to need to get some work done, but I trust Coach. And Hoosier Nation should trust Team 51 in the long run. So that's my take on it.
Emma.
That fired me up a little bit. Oh my God.
I know.
I think kind of the word that was going around during fall ball was there was a lot of anticipation now because it's one thing to go from a kind of a mediocre team to a good team. It's another thing to go from a good team to a great team. Now from Team 50 to Team 51, it's about going from good to great. And that's all that Coach Stanton talks about is becoming good to great. But she's also talking to her players about how it's one game at a time. Now, the ceiling for this team, again, it's going to take one game at a time. And we are 2 seconds into the season.
Right.
But I think that there's a lot of anticipation, there's a lot of expectation on these players in that locker room and from the fan base to just continue what the foundation has been built these past couple of years and what Team 50 accomplished. So I think that the ceiling for them is honestly go back to the NCAA tournament and prove that you belong on the national stage. You got there. People doubted you. You showed up to Knoxville. You had that rainy game where Coach Stanton stood in front of the tarp. You lost twice to Tennessee. You got knocked out. Okay, now you get punched. You punch back. You come back. And so for the Big Ten tournament, I expect them to want to challenge for one of those top 3 seeds. I expect them to want to make it to Championship Sunday. But really, the eyes are not necessarily on the conference tournament. If I'm looking at them, I'm looking to see what they can do on the national stage and prove that, you know what, Indiana belongs there.
You guys have just made me want to go run through a wall for this team. That was some great analysis. I want to take a look big picture now, and to do that, we're going to play a game. It's time for Who You Got. Here's how it works. I've got 6 questions, 2 individually for each of the panelists, and they have 30 seconds to give me their answers. We know their softball knowledge is spectacular, but can they be succinct about it? We're about to find out. Emma, I'm going to you first. Are you ready?
Okay, let me prepare for this. I don't know how I'm going to get this in 30 seconds.
All right, and you're up. Who can take down Oklahoma?
I think the best way to take down Oklahoma is to lock them out of the field and make sure that they don't play. In that regard, if I'm the opposing team, that's what I got to do. But that's such a great team this year, and they're proving early on that even though they struggle in a little bit, they're getting over those bumps. But really, I'm circling that Texas series in Austin, April 5th through April 7th. That Texas team is one of the most complete teams that I've seen in recent years under their coach. And I think that, it's one of the hardest things to do in softball is to sweep. Oklahoma does it all the time, but I think Texas could kind of bring it to them when they come down to Austin.
Ryan, you're up. The best conference in softball.
I think it's the SEC. They have 12 out of their 13 teams ranked, and like 2 of the 3 polls, and Georgia, LSU, Alabama, they're up there. It's going to be really fun to watch them go at each other, and it's going to be even more fun next year when Texas and Oklahoma join that conference, and they have, 13 or 14 teams ranked next year? So the SEC definitely this year.
Ryan Canfield on the end. Biggest dark horse in softball this season?
When you think of dark horses in softball in 2024, there's a little school in Bloomington, Indiana. And they're the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, no, I'm serious. They could be the favorite to win the Big Ten. They have experience against good teams, Arizona, Oregon, Clemson, who we'll talk about in a little bit.
I love it.
But I mean, Watson, help me out here. Is there anything wrong with what I just said?
Help me out, Watson.
No, I think you're right. When you look at dark horses in softball, they're teams that kind of teeter inside the 30 to 35 RPI. Now, RPI standings are not out yet. But Indiana, I mean, you could have considered them Team 50 as a dark horse last year. But I think, I think they could fit that bill. I don't think they see them as dark horses, though. I think they think that they belong in that top 25. But I mean, it's not wrong.
And then I go back to the conversation that Ryan had with Coach. 65% of the roster coming back. Yeah, Taryn Kern is a big-time loss, but they have the world at their fingertips right now. They could go on a magical run.
Emma, I'm coming back to you. Who wins the Big Ten and SEC conferences?
I'm gonna agree with Ryan here. I think
Going
the
Indiana.
I know. I think that I've never picked Indiana before, and so this feels nice. Third time's the charm. But what I mean is that the Big Ten right now, because Jordy Ball is out for Nebraska, because Northwestern is young, because there are so many teams that are still kind of rebuilding, I think it's a toss-up, no pun intended, that Indiana may be the most complete team in the Big Ten right now, and come conference play, could steamroll. Now, they've got competition. They've got that Evanston series. They've got Penn State. They also got Minnesota coming to Bloomington as well, and Minnesota is always kind of a sneaky team in that way. But I think Indiana has a shot. Now, in terms of SEC, you got Big Ten, that's a toss-up. SEC is a battle royale. That is a fight to the finish. And I hope that my biases don't come through, but I am going to choose Georgia. Because I know. Because Georgia, in my opinion, the offense is there, the pitching is there, the fight is there. They're playing these really tough teams, and they're beating them 20-10 against Florida State, who went to the Women's College World Series Championship final just last year. I think that Georgia could win the SEC, but, that depends. Who's going to get hot first? And there are so many teams, like Ryan said, in the SEC that could find that spark early.
Ryan, who wins the Big 12 and the Pac-12 conferences?
You can't talk the Big 12 without mentioning Oklahoma. They've won it 10 to 12 years in a row, and I think they have a good chance of winning it again. But like Emma said, Texas is a really good squad. They've shown so far in the non-conference that they're competitive, that they are going to be up there. They're number 2 in the nation, so that weekend series against them is going to be very key. I think it's between Texas and Oklahoma, but I think Patty Gasso will figure it out and win once again. And then moving to the Pac-12, I think in the last year of the regular Pac-12, I think it's going to be Washington because they played Oklahoma very, very tough. I know they might have a couple more losses and their schedule might not be as pretty and their record might not be as pretty, but I definitely think it's going to be Washington.
Ryan, finish us out the rest of the Power 5 conferences, the ACC champs this season.
Clemson, only because they beat Indiana. No, but actually, though.
Wow.
Clemson, before we came on, Emma said that as soon as we're done recording, she's going to watch Georgia and Clemson. Isn't that right?
That is true.
That is
so
true.
I'm counting it down.
That's a big-time matchup.
So I'll pose the last question to all of you. You can jump in whenever you want. Who wins the World Series?
I'd say my takes have been rather hot, but we'll go chalk here. Oklahoma.
Ryan?
I definitely think it's also going to be Oklahoma still. I think teams like Texas, Georgia, Washington have a really good chance at maybe forcing them to 2 to 3 games in the national championship series, but they've been there 3 times in a row. They've won it, and I think they're going to make it a 4-peat.
Emma, take us home.
I kind of agree with Ryan that, with Oklahoma, that it's so hard to beat them twice. And in order to win the Women's College World Series, you at least have to beat them 2 in a row, or at least twice. But, we're going to have a little bit of fun, and I want to be different. I'm going to go with the Dogs.
Oh, boy.
I'm going with Georgia. I think that
Georgia again?
I'm going with Georgia. I'm going with Georgia. Don't laugh at me. He's saying Indiana for every question. So. But I'm going to go Georgia. I think that Oklahoma this year, I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but there is just something a little bit off about this team. They're letting teams hang around to that 5th, that 6th inning. They're not squashing teams in the 2nd inning like they used to. And you're starting to see that with other teams like Georgia, like Clemson, like Washington, starting to pick up kind of where they left off in the postseason. Georgia's gotten us unlucky in their draws in the NCAA tournament. They had to go down to Tallahassee and play Florida State, and that's how they got knocked out last year. But I think this Georgia squad is dangerous. And if they make it to the championship series, I think they're going to put up a hell of a fight.
Well, that's some amazing analysis. It's always fun when we have you talented people on the panel. I really, really appreciate it. We've had some laughs. It's been great, but we still got a little bit more to come. Coming up after the break, Cora Bassett joins the show to give us some unique insight on this year's softball squad. We'll be right back. Everyone, we have a very special guest in the studio joining me, senior softballer Cora Bassett. Cora, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, lovely to have you on. So I'll jump right into it. You're part of a great group of upperclassmen, anchors of this team, juniors and seniors.
Yes.
So how have you seen yourself and this group grow over the past couple of seasons, both on and off the field?
Yeah, so I'll start with on the field. It has just been such a blessing and so awesome seeing our juniors, especially Taylor Minnick, Bree Copeland, Heather Johnson, Kinsey Mitchell, Sarah Stone, just absolutely grow from, when I came here, they were just freshmen, and they really had a lot to learn, you could say, but oh my gosh, they've just taken everything that they've been given and just really grown, and they've really been an anchor to this team. And then being surrounded myself with so many strong seniors, they've made myself and the team just such better people and players. It's awesome to be a part of.
So this squad had a great season last year,
Yes.
shaping up to be even better this season. What are some things in particular and specifically that you've worked on in the offseason and this team's really worked on in preparation for this year to reach new heights?
Yeah, so I think a big thing we've been focusing on is power of contribution. And so being in a smaller team of 18 people, some people would say it's maybe weird or something, but for us it's been something we've been able to grow on, and it's been awesome to see our entire team just contribute what they have to make this team as strong as it can be. And we all have our different quirks and our different strengths, and it's just been great to all combine it to create such an awesome team.
Who are some of the biggest contributors you think on this team that people may not know about or maybe not give enough credit to?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously this entire team has something to give. I think behind the scenes, our faculty is just something that, they've just instilled so much into us with Coach Stanton, Coach Bell, Coach Kendrick, Coach Gab. They've just made us into such strong women. And I think maybe it just goes unnoticed because most people are focused on the players. But for me, that coaching staff has grown us into being such a great team for sure.
So we're early on into the season.
Yeah.
A couple really big wins, some really close losses, really competitive teams that you guys have played early on. What are some of the positives that you can take from those close losses to ranked teams and carry that over into the latter half of the
well, you
season?
saw our 14-inning game, right, against
Right.
Arizona, right? Yeah, definitely.
Remarkable.
Yes, remarkable.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh, I've never been a part of a team a game like that. It was awesome, but. I think there's just so much to be said about the losses that we've had, just because we're not going to take those as just like failures. We're definitely going to take those as lessons to be learned. And I think that there's something so special about that, and it's definitely, especially like that Arizona game, that's something I'll never forget. And then you got to go back to our big win against Oregon and stuff, and there's something to be taken from that too, and definitely a lot of lessons to be learned there. So, yeah, I think that overall, every game, wins, losses, we've just been growing as a team in every moment.
So I want to zoom out for a second because softball and really women's sports as a whole is rapidly growing day after day. It's incredible. So I want to ask you, what's it like playing softball right now in a time where so many more eyes are being drawn to the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I can just think back to when I was like 10 or 12 when, you know, like growing up, like, and I could only dream of being surrounded by such greatness like this. And now to be here like at Indiana with such strong women, expect like the women's basketball team, rowing, I mean, et cetera, I could go on. I mean, it is so special to be a part of for sure. But I think that there is like room to grow. I know that I want to be a part of that growth, and I hope to be just a small part of it, especially here at Indiana. But I think especially when we go towards like looking at like professional sports in general, like looking at Athletes Unlimited, I think that there's something to be said there and for people to pay attention to, because softball is such a cool sport to look at, and you don't have to just pay attention to college. Like go look at Athletes Unlimited and pro. It's something cool for sure.
So this is your last ride.
Yes.
And I want to ask, what are some of the lessons that you've learned about yourself in your time wearing an IU uniform that you can take with you later in your life?
Yeah, I would say for softball in general, I've learned that softball is a big part of my life, but it's not everything. It's given me a lot. It's given me so many relationships, so many special moments, so many things to be remembered by, but it's not everything. But I think I'm always going to take the lessons I've learned from softball and definitely apply it to the rest of my life, whatever steps that may be. So,
Cora, last question for you. A message for Hoosier Nation. What can fans expect and should expect from Team 51 this season?
Yeah, I think you can expect a lot of fast and furiousness, a lot of just relentless, never giving up. I mean, we are a veteran team now, and we know it. And I think that every time we step on the field, we're gonna make the most of every moment for sure.
Cora, really appreciate the time.
For
Thanks
sure.
for coming on the show.
For sure.
Well, that's going to do it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports, and give our Toss-Up socials a follow at the Toss-Up IU and the Toss-Up 23 for Twitter and Instagram, respectively. As always, be sure to toss it up, find out if we knock this one out of the park, and we'll see you next week. God bless.